That was the wrong button. Hi, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to Late Night Comfort. My name is Wes Franks. My pronouns are he, they, and I am your lovable host. We are back again after a long hiatus with the internet's best kept secret talk show. And this time I have alongside me a co-host, a very, very wonderful close friend of mine. You may have seen him before on such shows as Crack the Sky and Mezzanine Alpha, as well as Displaced and Disorderly, our Cyberpunk Red game. You might have listened to his music. It is the phasing octopus himself, Derrick. Derrick, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, I'm the phasing octopus. How y'all doing?
Perfect.
Ain't much to say. Listen
Ain't
to my music.
much to say. Listen to your music, exactly. So how you doing today, Derrick? I just wanted to talk to you real quick, see how you're doing, checking in with you. You know, not like I've been checking in with you for the past 30 minutes, but really, truly, how are you doing this evening?
I am good, man. Been playing Elden Ring. Like, that's been my whole everything.
Very, very, very productive playing Elden Ring. Of course, we're talking about From Software's latest video game, Elden Ring, which is known for such popular memes as Tri-Finger Butthole, and as well as calling people maidenless, which is something that I have been getting flack quite a bit thrown at me. Just people calling me maidenless and tarnished through my day-to-day life because of this game. And I can't stand it, but it's okay. We carry on. We carry on. Speaking of carry on, Carrying Cover Studios, if you have not followed us yet, then be sure to hit a follow for us. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter for any updates, and subscribe to our YouTube so you can see this episode if you can't stick around for us, and other great episodes of our shows, all for free. It's there. I know, it's wild. People say, Wes, why do you just put free content on the internet? And I say, well, I have no other means of, putting it behind paywalls for right now. But we'll see. We'll see. Speaking of paywalls, let's talk about our sponsors for tonight. Our sponsors for tonight, we have three very, very special groups that are partners of the show. We have Callow, which provides plant-based gaming supplements that are easier on your wallet, but also much healthier for you than the alternative. We are talking about G Fuel, of course. They have such products as Q Energy, which is a powdered energy-based drink. They have Q Focus to help you focus, Q Sleep to help you sleep, and Q Flex as a post-workout, also joint relaxing supplement. So go ahead and check them out. And also, we have Dice Envy. If you are a dice goblin or you collect your own dice hoard, then be sure to check out Dice Envy. They are the makers of handcrafted, high-quality dice from all different materials, including resin. We have wooden dice. I have their very own one of their handcrafted wooden dice sets, gemstone, metal, and much more. But they also have such accessories like dice trays, dice bags, and much more. Be sure to check them out, Dice Envy. As well, we have a new sponsor, 1985 Games. 1985 Games are the creators of Dungeon Craft, which is a dual-sided dungeon tiled-based terrain builder that is easy on your wallet and also easy to manage and to put together. I use Dungeon Craft at my home games. They also have such great products like Deck of Stories. If you need help giving you a little bit of ideas, story prompts, hooks for your different campaigns that you have coming up, encounters, NPCs, Deck of Stories is a nice little card-based way to kind of get your brain cells moving and jamming. We also have miniatures and more, so check out 1985 Games. And for all three of those wonderful companies, if you use code COMFORT at checkout, you get 10% off of your order, and you help us out. Speaking of helping us out, Derrick, are you ready to meet our guest tonight?
Yeah, run it.
Our guest is an energy and international security scholar with over 15 years of experience in the oil and gas sector. He has a master's degree in international security policy from Columbia's SIPA program, where he studied intelligence analysis and the Middle East, and his undergraduate work focused on counterterrorism, human rights, and forensic science at John Jay's College of Criminal Justice. That is not all. He is also worked in that sector as well as in a sector that is very much familiar with our audience as well as you and I, and that is writing for TTRPGs, which works on different supplements and game systems like Mummy the Curse, the Tome of Artifacts for Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, Belial's Brood, as well as most recently the Camarilla Second Inquisition Sabbat supplements for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and has a brand new supplement out that he has written alongside other fantastic writers in the space. We have with us Khaldoun Khelil. Thank you, everybody. Khaldoun.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing all right. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. It's a pleasure to have you on our show as our first guest back. So I just need to ask, who are you and how did you get here?
Well, we're not in the same place.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, I'm just talking to you over this thing, but I'm Khaldoun Khelil, and I started writing for RPGs, I guess, boy, I don't know, 21 years ago, something like that, maybe 1999. Not quite sure. I think my first credit for a Vampire the Masquerade book was Cairo by Night. It was a project consultation. That was for the second edition book. I did some writing for that book as well, and I was rewarded with a true Bruja being named after me, which is the worst. But it is what it is. And ever since then, I've been kind of writing for RPGs as a hobby in the background while pursuing my career, as it were. And now I'm kind of in a position where I can focus on RPGs more, which has been great.
Perfect, excellent. Yeah, I was looking through and just kind of getting ready for this interview and seeing your body as a work, and just you've had your hand all over specifically the World of Darkness, and you've been such an instrumental part of it when it comes to writing in that. Which is very interesting to see that kind of growth and kind of track where you've been. Also, very instrumental in the part that you are what I would have to say is the visage of a Ventrue to me in the V5 book. That might not be the case or what that was the intent, but I know in the V5 book before the character section, there is a full photo of you. I'm going to bring it up here. It's right there in the center in the middle of your worker's collage. Your writer's collage here. I opposed to just seeing like the Ventrue in the Ventrue section of the book. I saw that and I saw the suit, the power tie, the shadowing, the look you had going on, and I was like, that's a Ventrue through and through. That's exactly what it is in my head. So very nice. Speaking of being a Ventrue, do you like my shirt?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I like color.
Perfect.
I like color very much.
Perfect. Big fan of florals myself. Big fan of florals myself. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you, your background. Where do you come from? A lot of just kind of what started you on this journey. What makes Khaldoun Khaldoun?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. Luckily, I've had some therapy in the past, so I can help answer that a bit. I guess I was born in Algeria, in Algiers. My mother is Palestinian. My father is Algerian. I have Algerian nationality. I moved to the United States when I was about 3 years old. And for those at home, Algeria is in North Africa. It's south across the Mediterranean from France. It was occupied by France for 150 years. But my father's generation and his parents' generation, successfully threw off the occupation in a very famous revolution. There's even a movie about it, a famous Italian movie called The Battle of Algiers. And I guess we moved to D.C., Washington, D.C., when I was about 3 years old, I'd say. And I've been in the United States ever since then. I got my citizenship. I got my green card a long time ago, but I got my American citizenship in 1999. And so I've been an American citizen ever since, naturalized. Yeah, I've been playing role-playing games ever since I was a kid. The first role-playing games I played were kind of Dungeons and Dragons, like AD&D, but not really. Like we really didn't use the rules or know what we were doing. the first RPG I like really played, like, you know, soup to nuts, was Champions, the superhero role playing game, and superhero role playing still has a very special place in my heart. Um, and you know, since then I went through several games until Vampire came out. I got the soft cover book. I worked in a hobby store, and so I got the very first edition of Vampire, the soft cover green book in, actually I don't know if it was even green actually. I guess that was like 91, 92, and I've been playing that ever since, and you know, writing for it in a sense since I guess 99, 2000, around there. Yeah. And I guess as far as my work and security and energy and all that, some of my interest in that came from the sci-fi space, from reading Dune, you know, works like that. Really got me interested in politics and energy, and you know, where those things meet.
Perfect. You stated Champions was like your kind of first like true system that you played, not just hodgepodge D&D. What drew you to Champions in the hero system, and what was the first thing that kind of really drew you to it, and what how have your thoughts evolved over the years, and kind of seeing how the hero system has kind of grown as well. We also have a hero system game here that was run by our team member Zeke that was called Abnormalcy. So I had my first-hand experience. I had never played it before. I knew it existed. I knew Champions was a thing, but I played Champions online way back in the day. But never played the TTRPG until last year. But yeah, what was kind of your experience with that?
Well, it's kind of the classic. My brother played it, so my older brother played Champions, and so he had a lot of the books, and I was interested in playing as well, and so I played Champions with my brother and my brother's group. Um, and Champions I played, I guess I was in middle school was when I started playing Champions, and the group of people I would play with who was introduced to through my brother. But my brother kind of, I don't know, maybe he like went to college or something. I don't really quite remember, but he's kind of stopped playing, but I kept playing. And the group I played with was actually all Vietnam veterans. I was like the youngest person in the group. And so they had a very different perspective on Champions than I did. Um, you know, like I was creating these kind of like Deadpool / Spawn, you know, blood sport, you know, Image comic style Iron Age heroes. Like that's why I wanted to play. And while they kept making these, you know, Adam Warlock-esque, like gold band wearing, like cosmic heroes, and you know, I think that really it was an interesting juxtaposition. I've written essays about it, which is basically, you know, from my perspective, I really was interested in like kind of the gritty power fantasy of it, while they were much more concerned with, you know, the just use of power. And that's the kind of heroes they wanted to play. And you know, I think for superheroes, what makes it interesting is you're playing these characters with these massive powers. You know, you can basically play anything you want in Champions. Like there's really no limit. If you can do the math, you can make the character. But the real problem with Champions on some level is that it doesn't really present you with the answer to the question of, you know, how do you save the world? I can create a character that can, you know, blow a hole through a tank or fly across the world, you know, 33 times in a row. But is stopping a bank robbery in any way helping to save the earth? No, not really. And so what would a superhero who can actually, you know, save us look like? And I don't think Champions really had any answers for that.
Yeah, definitely. It was. It's very interesting, like seeing from where I saw it. It did definitely the writing on it definitely seemed a bit more focused on the look what you can do powers, the customization of it more, and just like, oh cool, you can do this, than it was really just kind of providing those questions and those kind of like not guidelines, but so to speak, but like prompts and hooks, and that very much. It's very interesting to see how a group of people play. We definitely played it with a more mutual aid aspect in mind, even though a lot of our characters could do quite a bit of good that would exceed upon just helping a few city blocks. Specifically, one of my characters could, manipulate lava and had seismic activity and stuff. And I'm like, that's probably much more beneficial than protecting a fish market during an alien invasion. But we do what we can handle. No, excellent. Thank you so much. That's great.
Man. So I didn't even know Champions Online had a TTRPG connected to it.
That's it. Like I didn't even either until 2 years ago. I just thought it was just a multi MMORPG.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Okay, great. Excellent. Yeah, Derek, want to take it away?
Yeah. So like, what's your favorite thing about writing in the TTRPG space?
Boy, I don't know. What is my favorite thing about writing an okay, well that's all right. Well, that's actually a really great question because it hits upon something which, I think every writer has to deal with, which is there's stuff you like to write and there's certain things you like to write, and then there's who your audience is, and what your audience wants. And I mean, not to be crude, but what your audience is capable of absorbing or is interested in absorbing. So when you're writing for RPGs, like if you're writing on too high-minded a level, your audience isn't really going to be interested in that sometimes, unless that's what they're buying the book for. So for me, I really enjoy subtext and subtlety. I really enjoy writing things which blend not just really the lore. I mean, lore is kind of a loaded word nowadays. When you say lore, I mean, you really kind of open up a real box of worms. But that doesn't just explore the lore of the setting, but that enforces what you've put in thematically in your work. So I really like mechanics that enforce themes and work within the lore of the setting. So that's what I really love to do. When I can write, like say in Vampire V5, there's the lore sheet system, where it's basically a very small piece of lore or a character or something, and you can buy merits that connect you to that piece of lore somehow on a personal level with your character. So mechanics that basically connect you to a piece of lore, but don't overpower you with that lore, and it's all optional and it's strictly the player's buy-in. Like I feel that's I really love writing those, and I kind of challenge myself to like write them in like an hour or 30 minutes or whatnot. Like on Twitter, somebody posted a meme about like, it was a Spider-Man meme with like, with Sauron, the pterodactyl man, and he's riding a dinosaur. And Spider-Man says, "Oh, you could create, you can change DNA, on a genetic level. Like you could cure cancer." And he's like literally riding a triceratops, and he says, "Well, I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs." And like somebody did that meme, but changed the word dinosaurs into furniture, and they renamed the guy Zemisei instead of Sauron. Well, you could do, cure cancer. You don't have to turn people into furniture. He's like, but I want to turn people into furniture. So I wrote a lore sheet all about that, about this, how to turn people into furniture, and that was a lot of fun. And it was actually able to connect it with the themes and the lore of the game. It's actually in the back of my book now.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's my favorite part about writing, is when I can seamlessly blend those things, and get it. And if preferably if the theme is something I care about, if the theme is something I care about, then that's what's really important. Because a lot of times you don't really get to tackle, I don't know, important things in RPG writing. So if you can tackle a theme you care about in a way that can connect with people where they're reading it, then that's wonderful. Like I mentioned Dune before. Like one thing that really makes Dune an interesting read is you're reading about oppression, occupation, imperialism, colonialism, the exploitation of like indigenous people's resources, the exploitation of these indigenous people this kind of like the good face and the evil face of imperialism, and how basically it's the same thing, just a different face on like the same structure, whether it's Atreides or Harkonnen or Imperial or whatnot. And you're reading all that in a package and don't even realize it until you've absorbed it.
Mm. So, doubling back to Sauron and dinosaurs.
Okay.
What dinosaur would you get feet pics from?
What dinosaur would I get feet pics from?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I assume some kind of raptor, maybe a velociraptor. They seem to have the most interesting feet of dinosaurs.
Oh, you like that claw action, huh?
Yeah, of course, the big fat claw action. Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
I want some action.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. That. What a great question, Derek. Thank you. Fantastic. No, that's. You got me there. And then I'm going to double back on writing and what you said specifically also about Dune and incorporating themes into mechanics. It's something, and I know that you are on Twitter. Not an unhealthy amount compared to some people, but you and I are about
any amount on Twitter is unhealthy.
It is a nightmare hellscape. I am trying to fine tune it the best that I can, just by hitting that block button on people that I don't want to give time or effort to.
I block people randomly. It's fun.
Yeah, it's just I sometimes go into random threads. I am not going to reply in them. I'm just like, yeah, that's somebody I'm going to block just in case. Yeah,
definitely.
But it's always a common what we see in the TTRPG space, and it's something that's common just in Twitter spaces in general. What we see in TTRPG Twitter, movie Twitter, video game Twitter, it's currently happening with accessibility in gaming and Elden Ring coming out. But one of the common hot button clout farms, as I like to call them, clout or content farms, is politics and gaming. And especially politics and D&D is always the big one because that's the most popular game. When some people don't even say tabletop role playing games, they just say Dungeons and Dragons. Do you think that is a and not to give any kind of insight into what is the for lack of a better kind of term for it, the circle jerk that is discourse on Twitter about teacher, because we cycle through it every 6 months. It's the same discussions. What are your thoughts on the fact that TTRPG games and most media in general is inherently political unless it is significantly pulp and it is intended for pulp value? Like I would say, but even then, Star Wars being pulp, still has politics at its basis. What's your thoughts on how has it always been this way, and we've always just and people are just trying to make it a discussion topic, and they're just trying to scream about something, or has there actually been a time in tabletop role playing history where it stopped being about sword and sorcery and gathering loot, and games started taking a more political focus, and games like Dune, Dune, and like the former Dune role playing game, and the new one that came out from Modiphius, Vampire the Masquerade, most of the World of Darkness titles. Do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wrote on the new Dune game and for the core book and for the Arrakis book.
Mm-hmm.
So I can definitely say that for those books and that setting, there's really no choice but to know what you're saying right from the get-go and understand that it has a political basis. I think really what it comes down to is there are some people who are political. I mean, I, as a Arab American, Palestinian, whatnot, from a Muslim background, my existence here in America is a political one.
Yes.
And I think that's the same if you're, African American, a person of color or whatnot. So I think the only people who can really, quote unquote, divorce themselves from politics are the ones who are insulated from political decisions. So if you're going to be okay, regardless what the Supreme Court says about, abortion, immigration, or healthcare, then you have the privilege of being non-political. If a Supreme Court decision comes down tomorrow that strips me of my naturalized citizenship, that's a problem, and therefore I'm a political person because my life and my livelihood and that of my family depends upon political decisions. My level of insulation and privilege is less than the privileged class. Um, so I think really what's happening isn't so much that games are becoming more political. It's just that the people who are most affected by political decisions in this country specifically are now having more of a say in what happens in games and what gets included in games, and more importantly, what gets confronted in games.
Mhm.
So in the past, I think we could say, let's keep the politics out of games, but the politics is always in games. I
Mhm.
mean, some of the earliest D&D adventures are, like against the slave lords and stuff like that. I
Yes.
mean, you're tackling, slavery in this kind of like ridiculous way in Dungeons and Dragons with, swords and all that without really um talking about what the implications are for the setting you're creating.
Mhm.
You make that such a huge part of the setting. I mean, thankfully they constructed it that those were the bad guys, but still, I mean, you're still creating like a fantasy economy that has this great evil within it, and there seems to be whole goddamn countries that have no problem with that. And possibly player characters that have no problem with that. Which is political when you allow that in a game. So I feel it's more of a matter of framing than of any real distinct change. As far as World of Darkness, it's a game set in the modern world that's supposed to be like darker and eviler and more corrupt than our current world. So obviously, the political dimension has to be addressed.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Derek, you have some, speaking of politics, you have some questions that you got here for Khaldoun related to his experiences in other fields.
Oh yeah. So like you specialize in energy and finance, especially in the Middle East, in relation to climate change, security, and more. What drew you to do that? Like what made you want to go into that?
Um, Well, that's a lot. There's a lot of answers to that, I guess. On some level, it's kind of a family business.
Okay.
My mother, she is an activist. She's been working for Palestinian human rights ever since like I was a little kid. She's done like hunger strikes, all that stuff. She like passed out on the lawn of the White House in a hunger strike in like the 80s. And worked for Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign with the Rainbow Coalition as one of his national co-chairs. And so I was always interested in politics in the Middle East on that level. Obviously, my family is there. And as far as energy and finance, uh, you know, my father's in the oil business. He actually worked for the World Bank as their energy advisor. Rewrote like Peru's constitution or something for that for their benefit as far as natural resources. And so I kind of grew up around oil, the Middle East, all that. Like that was like what was on my bookshelf. When I read Dune, I also read a book called The Prize by Daniel Jurgen at the same time. I think I was like 13 or 14 at the time. And that's basically like the history of oil in the world. And reading those books side by side, it really showed me how much of our world is shaped by this kind of like quest for this prize for oil, which is often in places that, we, quote unquote, the US does not control. So we have to find reasons to control those places one way or the other, whether physically, politically, or whatnot. So that's what drew me to it on some level. I was always interested in how the world worked, um, and how it really worked on some level. Because obviously, growing up Arab, Muslim, all that in the U.S., I would watch the news, I would listen to my teachers, and they would really present me with a world I did not recognize. They would tell me about myself as an Arab or a Muslim, and I could clearly see they had no, excuse my French, no fucking clue what they were talking about, and no goddamn clue what was happening in the Middle East or Africa for that matter. So I was really interested in informing myself and, being able to participate in those conversations from a place of authority instead of basically, oh, let's agree to disagree. It's like, well, no, I'm going to agree to be right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. And we're going to go to a break here real quick. But before that, I want to kind of tie into that question. How's your experience working in that sector and like working with your experience in doing your scholar studies and writing articles and essays in that area and doing those studies? How is that informed on your writing and your consulting in the TTRPG spaces?
Um, well, boy, that's a good question. I guess there's not actually. I think on some level it's been good. I think like my exposure, it's gotten me more exposure, so maybe more name recognition
Hmm.
in the RPG space. The other way, there's been absolutely nothing. Like I can be on actual plays, I can write these books about basically evil satanic vampires and the such.
Hmm.
Like in Belial's Brood, just do like the Belial's Brood book is probably like one of the grimmest RPG books I've ever written on,
Hmm.
like way grimmer than anything I've written for Sabbat or V5.
Yeah.
Um, and so far that's never no one's ever brought that up in
Hmm.
when I'm like talking at like the Middle East Institute or something. So the RPG is such a niche space that if you're not in it, it really doesn't even exist for you.
Hmm.
Like I think only one time has anyone ever said to me in an interview, I Googled you and blah 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 about RPGs. Nowadays, they're smart enough not to say that they Googled you.
Yeah.
Uh, like that's kind of like now that's frowned upon, but back in the day, people would actually admit that they Googled you. Um, so yeah, I think in the RPG space, it's been interesting and it's lent me some credibility and authority that I think I wouldn't have. I think that there's this kind of idea that if you come from a certain culture or background, you're somehow biased
Hmm.
and can't like objectively like write about those things.
Yeah.
That they need to bring in, yet again, I mean, not to be indelicate, but they have to bring in an objective person to write about those things, which usually means a white guy.
Yeah.
That the Arab guy can't write about Arab things, and that's true, it seems,
Hmm.
of, all cultures. So being, the Arab or Muslim guy who also has, a graduate degree from an Ivy League school on these issues, I can very easily like shut down that kind of pondering. It's like, oh, is this guy going to be biased? It's like, well, who are you going to get to write an RPG, about that who has the same qualifications? Like nobody.
Exactly. Exactly. And we've got more questions for you here. We're going to be talking about Mummy, as well as the book that you have behind you, The Black Hand, playing the
Morning.
Sabbat, and
Mhm.
more. So we are going to be going to a quick break, and we will be right back. So do not go anywhere, and be sure if you have any questions, be sure to ask them in the chat. And we are back with Khaldoun Khelil, writer, scholar extraordinaire, excellent guest. And thank you for bearing with us with a quick break here. But yeah, so kind of rolling into what we were talking about before, talking about how your experiences and when your times when you were doing your scholarly studies and also just doing your consultant work and your security and climate change work. We have a question from a Patreon member. This is from at Natalie20 on Twitter. How do you deal in adventurers tropes like those in The Mummy while being sensitive to not creating a colonialist power fantasy? I think this is an excellent question for you, especially with your work that you did on not only Mummy the Resurrection and the Player's Guide, but also Mummy the Curse. So what do you think about that?
Well, I assume they mean something from along the lines of like the pith helmets and the such, and like the Mummy movie.
Very much, yeah, very much like Nathan Drake or
Right.
yeah, or Indiana Jones. Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. I don't know how much Mummy helps me with that, because in those games you're playing the actual mummies. So you're not if you're wearing a pith hat, you probably took it off the corpse of the guy who woke you up. Um, so I guess that's an answer in of it of itself. Is that's how you deal with it. Is in one of the benefits of the World of Darkness games is you kind of get to flip the script.
Mhm.
You get to play the monster, and the reason we play the monsters, usually when we play a monster, it's so that we can talk about experience and deal with things that we usually are uncomfortable talking about or experiencing, in our everyday lives. So when you're playing the monster, oftentimes you're personifying those dark thoughts, feelings, traits that are uncomfortable to face, in your everyday life, or to face just, as yourself. By taking on the monster persona, you are able to deal with those things, whether it's, addiction or violent thoughts or impulsiveness or whatnot, whatever it may be. Um, so I think that's kind of the benefit of the World of Darkness. As far as avoiding colonialist tropes, that's something that's a matter of, I feel, every game really has to deal with. And in the World of Darkness specifically, the issue is when you're dealing with human evil, that you don't ascribe human evil to something that's supernatural. So that's a big kind of bright red flag that you always have to be aware of. Like in the early editions of the World of Darkness, they were not that successful in doing that. They
Mhm.
would very often say, "Well, a vampire made this country do this," and it's like, well, that sucks, because
Yeah.
that actually happened, and people died, and other people were persecuted, and there's still people dealing with that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that kind of mining real world tragedies for new vampire clans or whatnot, or new werewolf tribes, or who knows what, became kind of a staple of the World of Darkness, and that was a real pitfall that editions since then had to really dig themselves out of. And I'd say that it took 30 years to do so. Only in V5 do I feel we've really divorced ourselves from a lot of the worst aspects of that, and there's still some of it that we're still deal with
Mhm.
to this day, because it's very difficult to divorce yourself from the lore, because the players are invested in your setting. So when you make those early mistakes, it can be very difficult to course correct. Um, so for me, my watchword is always, there's nothing more evil. The evilest monster, in a sense, is a human. There's nothing more depraved. There's nothing that a monster is going to do that's more depraved than what a human has already done. And unlike a monster, like say in Vampire, who has like the beast who's like pushing them, a human
Mhm.
has no such excuse. All of their actions are their own.
Excellent. Excellent. And that's a good jumping off point into talking more about World of Darkness and vampires specifically. Before that, do you have any questions, Derek, that you wanna pitch up here?
Yeah. So like, let's say you believe in ghosts and shit, right? Like, do you believe ghosts are like actually spirits, or are they temporal anomalies, like slipping in through like a higher dimension, like they slipping on their shit and they sliding in on us?
Well, I guess I don't personally believe in ghosts, but if I got to choose what a ghost actually was, like what would be my preference, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess my preference would be if ghosts were, I don't know, like psychic echoes of ourselves, maybe some kind of supernatural impression of ourselves that gets left behind.
Ooh.
I wouldn't really be comfortable if ghosts were actually ourselves or our psyches, like trapped in this plane or something.
Yeah.
I'll much prefer if they were kind of, I don't know, a reflection captured in some kind of mirror or
Uh, like
membrane.
like just residual energy. Just
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Something
yeah.
left behind. I'm more comfortable with that, and in some ways, that's almost reassuring of like leaving behind a memento for others, but me myself not actually being, trapped on this planet. Gods already can't. I could rather just be dead.
I'm done
Yeah.
with it. Let me be. Let me
Exactly.
be. I did my time. I served my nickel. Please
There's a
let me
P
go.
in Rip.
Perfect. Well, kind of jumping off of that before we get into to Vampire and the Black Hand and your work on the Sabbat Second Inquisition. If you were surrounded by 1,000 children who seemed to look alike and they were heading towards you in a very ominous way, and you're really close to a really amazing and beautiful maze garden, there's probably some topiary, rose bushes, some statues. What would you do?
Um. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, I mean, I I guess I would run into the maze. I mean, I don't think I would be unless the children like were taking their heads off and throwing them at me. I don't think I would really be interested in, having a fight with them.
That's something I didn't think about. I didn't think
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
if they
I
were
think
like headless
I think
horsemen
in the
children.
maze I would have a distinct advantage over short children.
That's true. That's true. You
Um,
do have more cognitive learning skills at your hand when it
oh
comes
no,
to
I would just climb on shit.
oh,
I
just
mean,
climb.
children are,
Even better.
children think they're good climbers, but they're really not.
It's quite clumsy. Quite clumsy. Okay, see, that's me thinking that
Especially if there's an adult kicking them back down, then they're
yeah.
really bad at climbing.
There's just a lot of advantages that you have in your place. It's very much would you rather fight a giant duck, like a giant, like when you know what I'm talking about. Perfect.
Yeah, the
All right.
little ducks are the obvious answer. I
The
mean,
little
right? Or
ducks
the little
always.
or the horses, right? The
Yeah.
duck-sized horses are the obvious answer. Like
Yeah.
the horse-sized duck would destroy you.
Yeah,
Will
immediately. You're
annihilate you.
gone. Yeah, they
I
got
don't.
teeth.
Yeah, anybody who picks the big duck has obviously not seen the inside of a duck's mouth,
No, no. See, which
let
also
alone their other body parts.
oh gosh, a nightmare. Like Eldritch horror. Ducks are really Eldritch horrors. They look like birds, but there's a lot going on there that we didn't expect. Perfect. Well, Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition is well known across TTRPG spaces. It has been the focus of a lot of Twitter threads and rants. It has been the focus of various podcasts, actual plays, interviews, and otherwise. You mentioned at the start that you've been playing it since about 1992, 1993, and you've had your hand in writing it for. You've been writing for about close to 21 years. You said, and you've been writing off and on. You've had a part in Vampire the Requiem, Vampire the Masquerade, and you have all these books. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up your collage that you made here for us as well again here. Camarilla, Second Inquisition, the Sabbat, as well as the Black Hand. So tell us some of your favorite parts about Vampire the Masquerade specifically, and then kind of give us a very quick 30-second primer on the Sabbat, and then also the Black Hand.
Boy, I guess my favorite parts of writing for a vampire is when I can really delve into the leaving behind, humanity. The kind of, I guess, like with vampire, it's almost like the stage of grief.
Mm-hmm.
When you become a vampire, there's anger and denial and so on and so forth, bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, like let me keep this dot of humanity, I'll be good. I guess the part that interests me most is acceptance, like the final stage, basically. That's what interests me the most, when the mortal, in a sense, finally accepts that they're no longer mortal, and like what that means, going forward. Like that's what I like best about vampire. Because for me, it's one of the few role-playing games where, you know, you don't on some level play a human. Like sure, in Dungeons and Dragons you can play a dwarf or whatnot, but all those you know, races or, you know, they're operating from the same kind of baseline assumption. Like very few of them, you know, go beyond, you know, humanity in a sense. So to play something which is inherently, you know, not human, not mortal, is undead, and then what that means for you psychologically and not just, you know, physically, but psychologically and, you know, possibly spiritually, I find that very interesting. Yeah. Um, and as for Sabbat, I guess why I like the Sabbat most of all the, you know, sects and settings within Vampire, and also why I wrote the companion book with my co-authors Rachel Judd and Saskia Liddick, the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, is that I feel that's the part of Vampire the Masquerade that most explores the transhumanist aspects of vampirism. Like Sabbat are framed as, you know, evil monsters, and they are that because they have left behind their humanity on, you know, on a completely different level than the other vampires. Like the other vampires, in some sense, are still grieving for their mortal identity and trying to cling on to it as best they can, and in a lot of ways, lying to themselves that they can, you know, live this kind of half life. While the Sabbat, on some levels, say that that's just not the case. That, you know, we're vampires now, we have to accept that, and we have to move forward with that on some level. You know, some of their answers to that question, you know, people may not agree with. You know, the whole vampire supremacy thing. You know, I can see why some people may balk at the idea that, you know, mortals should be controlled by vampires or serve them. Yeah, that's, you know, that's problematic. There's definitely a conversation to be had there.
Yeah.
Uh, but part of that is because the crooks of Vampire, on some level, is that there is a this was a game written, you know, in the 90s. So this kind of like Y2K millennial, like the world is ending thing was kind of baked into the lore of the game, and it still is today. Um, so one of the reasons the Sabbat is evil and wants to leave behind its humanity is because they believe fully in this, you know, Gehenna prophecy that the world is, you know, doomed to end at the hand of these evil ancient vampires.
Mhm.
As we say in our book, The Black Hand playing the Sabbat, in the intro, you know, if it's the end of the world, you know, what are we waiting for? And I think that's something that any millennial could also, you know, understand that, you know, what are we waiting for? Like, why are we kidding ourselves? Why are we still playing the same stupid games, you know, politically or whatnot, when when the earth is on fire? We see examples of it, you know, every day. Why are we doing nothing about it? And so the Sabbat says, well, we are doing something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's very I love seeing it at that viewpoint and that perspective, especially and it's been I'm not gonna try I'm not trying to like dredge up controversy or anything like that as we know or controversy, just discourse. But there's a lot of people that are concerned with with the latest book that came out for with Renegade of like that the Sabbat are the bad guys and that they want to play Sabbat, which is always the case. You can always play Sabbat if you want to play Sabbat. Nobody's telling you to play otherwise. That's just where it is in the game line at that point. I feel like I have to remind myself that as much as other people because sometimes people they find these things very very important to their lives. They get very attached to these games, but I think it's such an interesting concept and it's something that resonates like you said with millennials that at the point of view, yes, they are terrible. I think what I'm trying to say is that like the Sabbat, it's very hard to look at the degrees of evil when looking at a game like Vampire the Masquerade because everybody is truly a villain. Even though if you are Camarilla, Anarchs, Atarchus, Sabbat, but you're looking at the degrees of evil and how is it more evil for the Camarilla to be feeding off of society and continuously and get just turning into livestock essentially fat cows that just live happy on the grass, or is it less evil for the Sabbat to be mask off very in your face about who they are and what it is, and I think it's a very important time for books like this, like for Black Hand and the Sabbat supplement to come out for players like this, because as we've mentioned, games are inherently political. When it comes to it, especially when you have political people involved, I think it's very important for them to see these multiple perspectives, but from a safe distance, and something that has a buffer from what's going on. What we see with happening in Palestine, with Israel, how they're interacting, in Ukraine, and stuff that's happening domestically here in the United States. I think it's a safer way for people to kind of come to terms with those kind of things. Though, I mean, even Zoomers, Generation Z, they're coming to terms with those things on a very everyday scale with TikTok and Twitter. So diving into the Black Hand that you helped write on, what specifically sets it apart from other supplements that people might use for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and what are some of the features and cool things that they might see within the book?
Well, since I wrote on the V5 Sabbat book, which is, as you said, is strictly antagonist book, presents the Sabbat strictly from an antagonist perspective. I didn't obviously want to contradict any of that work.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that work, and I think it's a very good book. I know I did a lot of hard work on it, as did my my co-authors. So I wanted something that could be used as a companion to that book, that didn't contradict it, but that allowed people to play Sabbat. And so it doesn't abrogate any of the lore within that book, or even the main points, which is as far as the continuum of evil and like what's worse, mask off or mask on. I really can't answer that question specifically, but what I can say is that the Sabbat are very much what we would call terrorists. They have a political point of view and a spiritual point of view. And they, in a sense, not to mix metaphors here, but they, in a sense, have awakened to the Matrix. They now see the false world, taken off from their eyes. They know that all the other vampires are basically playing these stupid games, while the ancients are rising and will destroy the earth. And what the hell are you doing? Let's rebel against the robots, in a sense. And so they're willing to do anything. Just like in the Matrix, where they like mow down whole buildings full of police and whatnot, and security guards with machine guns. Those are the good guys, running against the wall, unloading an M16 into a cop. That is that is where you're coming from the Sabbat perspective, is that these are the tools of the oppressive government, and so violence used against them is worthwhile, because the ultimate goal is to save everyone. Of course, humanity will become cattle, in a sense, but that is that's for later. That's a discussion for later. So there's no real argument about whether the Sabbat is good or bad, in a sense, or whether they're villains. I mean, they are villains, from a mortal perspective. It's more of a matter of what they're willing to do and what you're comfortable playing with. As far as what's in the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, that I feel is worthwhile as a companion to V5 Sabbat, if you wish to play Sabbat characters, is it has a very detailed safe play section, which I think is very important when you're coming into contact with these kind of concepts and ideas. You need a table that's ready to experience this kind of play style and these ideas, and you need frameworks to discuss those things. I feel that I never feel people aren't able to handle things. What I feel is that people need the frameworks and the tools to be able to discuss the things they might not even realize could be problematic for them.
Yeah.
Like the number of times I've sat down at a table and we've discussed lines and veils, and someone has said something like, "Oh, I don't have any lines and veils, but we can't talk about this." Like the amount of times that's happened, like at a table, I can't even tell you. And usually it's something like politics. Oh, we can't talk about Trump or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's funny in a sense, because they have a line, but
Mhm.
they are not willing to really admit it to themselves or to their friends that they have that line. And they'll even they'll basically contradict themselves in the
Yeah.
same sentence. It's like, oh, I'm fine with anything, but we can't talk about this.
Yeah.
You can feel it in their soul that they're serious. Like, don't talk about that.
Yeah.
So when we provide these frameworks and tools to have those discussions, I feel it's not only it's safer. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's safer and it makes for a better game, because instead of, like hurting someone, you can actually play the whole game and have those, dark, moments and those horror experiences. Because at the end of the day, it is a horror game.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we basically work within the V5 mechanics so that you can play these, inhuman paths of enlightenment. That's really, I feel, a main draw for playing Sabbat, is that you basically can play with spirituality from an inhuman perspective that I don't think a lot of games really delve into at all. I mean, some of the most I guess visceral playing experience I've ever had is playing Sabbat, like Noddists who are really into the path of Cain and have almost kind of a evangelical, like, Southern preacher aspect to them when they're talking about Cain. I mean, when you can role play that, I feel that's an experience you're not really going to get in many other games. And especially when you're talking about, inhuman vampire shit. So yeah, I think those are some of the main draws of the book, and we have, a lot of lore sheets in there and a lot of cool powers. I think there's like 20 new powers and 22 lore sheets, and all those paths I said, they all have mechanics for how they work using the current humanity system. We don't abolish the humanity system or touchstones, which are all super cool mechanics.
Yes.
We work with them, and we have, I think, 8 new predator types, which are dealing with the Sabbat, and 12 pack types, because obviously packs are very different than coteries and how they work. Because the Sabbat is, a very different experience. And I feel V5, unlike all the other editions of Vampire, they have taken some of the very core aspects of what has always been kind of Sabbat play. Because in old editions, there was very siloed play.
Yeah.
If you wanted to play a Lasombra or a Nemesis, you had to play Sabbat. If you wanted to play spiritual vampires that were all into Cain or like some vampire religion, you had to play Sabbat. There was all this stuff that was kind of like locked behind the door of the Sabbat game. But not so much with Camry and Anarch. You could kind of play whatever you wanted over there as long as you didn't touch the, Sabbat stuff.
Yeah.
With V5, they kind of unlock that door. Suddenly, vampire spirituality, you can do that in any of the sects. Lasombra and Zemese, oh yeah, they're in the Anarchs and the Camarilla too. Like, all that stuff has been opened up, and some of the core elements of Sabbat play, like the Antediluvians, Gehenna, all that stuff, has now become core concepts of V5 altogether. Beckoning and Gehenna War, those are core concepts of all vampire play now, not just Sabbat. So suddenly, all these Sabbat concepts are now the core of vampire play. So what is the Sabbat now? And so with Black Hand playing the Sabbat, we really got to get to the core of that without having to worry about like this kind of like political hypocrisy play that kind of became the Sabbat in older editions. This kind of Camarilla light, this like hot topic Camarilla. Like they're no longer that. Like they're very much interested in their core mission. They walk the talk now. Is basically what we wanted to get forward with the book.
Perfect. This is a personal question for myself, but it's a very popular one that we see all the time. There are quizzes that you can do on worldofdarkness.com. I'm sure there's loads of BuzzFeed ones of them. But what clan do you think you would be pulled into if you were to be embraced? Like, let's say you're going to go walk the dog or something tonight, and you get snatched up by Kindred, and you become Kindred. What clan do you think that you would belong to?
Zemese. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Get you some Baraka blades, be able to manipulate the flesh and bone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's one thing that we all, think about even if it's just as teenagers when we're like going through puberty or whatnot, is
Mm-hmm.
how our bodies change, and
Mm-hmm.
then as we get older, obviously, as our bodies rebel against us and slowly kill us, the idea of being able to change yourself on a physical level, is very interesting. And what effects that has on you psychologically and spiritually is also very interesting. Like if I hadn't grown into this body, this face, what would I be like, as a personality? And so what would I be like if I could, change myself on a whim, if I could change, how pretty I was, if I could change the color of my skin or the color of my eyes just on a whim, what would I choose? Who would I would choose to be on some level? So I feel Zemisei, um, it opens up a lot of interesting, role playing ideas.
I'm glad we're seeing that step with the recent releases with V5, transhumanism and those ideas of being able to change and essentially make yourself modular. It was what pulled me to cyberpunk as a genre from the very get go, and I love seeing it in Vampire as and it was always there, but I love seeing it for this new edition with new players, and kind of seeing this presented, even if it is from a grotesque way. It's oddly beautiful. So that's very cool. It's very cool. Do you have anything to add here, Derek?
Uh, got a got a Patreon question for you.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so Foxy Peppers asks, how do you sit and write a novel versus sitting and write a game supplement, and what keeps you on track?
So more so novel instead of, but like prose. I guess prose in general. Yeah, novel.
Well, I mean, I would wish I knew the answer to that question. I've got several chapters of a novel like sitting around, so yeah. But no, that's fair. I feel with a novel, for me, I'm kind of a pants writer. I guess there's planners and there's pantsers. I'm very much I have a basic outline, and then I basically sit down and I see where the story takes me. That's kind of the way I write a novel. I have a destination in mind, but very rarely do I reach the destination I was planning to get to. So I guess with a novel, I'm kind of driving down the road and I'm going west and I expect to hit California, but maybe I'll get to Oregon instead, or maybe Texas. Who knows? Depends on my sense of direction. So for stories, I kind of let the story tell me what's going on. For RPG writing, I really have to keep in mind the audience's expectations. Because when I'm writing a novel, obviously I'm haven't published a novel or have an audience for any of my work yet, as far as novels are concerned. But with RPGs, there's an audience. They have expectations when it comes to what's going to be in the book, not just with the prose, but with the mechanics as well. So that keeps you very much on track. And in some cases, you have to consciously decide when you're coloring outside the box, and when you color outside the box, you have to have an explanation in mind. You can't just color outside the box on a whim. Like everything has to have some reasoning behind it, and you have to be willing to explain yourself and be transparent in those explanations. Because as we may say, there's no canon, or lore is not important or whatnot. RPGs are a small space.
Mhm.
Like the reason people get into these arguments is because they're scared for the existence of their games, because these games are like shared worlds and environments and experiences, and there's nothing scarier than the thought that people will stop playing the game that you love.
Yeah.
And so if the game that you love changes in a way you no longer recognize, that's almost as bad as if they stop printing the books. And if the people around you are playing a game that you don't recognize, then that could be very threatening to your identity.
Mhm.
So you have to respect that on some level,
Yeah.
especially when you're writing these games.
Well, I think that that especially specifically with the Black Hand, you, Rachel, and Saskia have definitely helped kind of bridge that gap that I know that a lot of people kind of felt with different releases. And I am excited to implement some of these things in my future chronicles and campaigns. Before we continue with questions and things of that nature, I do want to let you know I dropped a link for the drive-through RPG. That is for the preview website, but also for the regular website. If you go now to drive-through RPG and you look up the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, you will see it is a 139-page full-color PDF. Beautiful art by Mark Kelly there. Wonderful writing. Like Khaldouns has said, over 20 new discipline powers. There are 12 new pack types for running Sabbat pack. And for some of those, it is the return of House Goratrix, Revenants, and more. And it is all for the very cool, very reasonable price of $24.99 on drive-through RPG. And before we kind of roll along here, I do have a couple of more listeners' questions. We just had one reminded here from Critical K. For questions later, okay, what are Kuzma's vices, weaknesses, and turn-ons? I have no context for that, but I think maybe you might have context for that.
That is my D&D character for a game I'm playing later. I'm playing in a Red Opera Dungeons and Dragons actual play.
That is correct.
So yeah, I don't know if I have a good question for that yet. I've literally just this will be my first time playing that character. Yeah. But yeah, I guess turn-ons obviously is he's a necromancer, so I mean, forbidden knowledge, immortality, those kind of secrets, power. His vices obviously is that he's very self-possessed, possibly a narcissist. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that answers the question.
Perfect. And our next listener question kind of goes hand in hand with this as well. This is from Kat at Dead and Glow on Twitter. Asks, how many times have you been a player in a game? That's kind of a big question there. And what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you? And kind of go into depth there. It's hard to put a number on how many games you've played, but if there's anybody that can do it, it's you.
I don't know how many games I've played. A lot. I've played in a lot of games. I am very often the DM or the storyteller, though I've been on a pretty good streak recently as far as being a player. I am at heart very much a vampire LARPer. I've been vampire LARPing since, I don't know, forever. My first vampire LARP was 30 years ago. At Atlanticon, run by Ian Lemke, the developer and writer of Changeling the Dreaming. It's a small world. So I have been a player. I've played plenty of games. Please don't feel sorry for me. I've played a lot. As far as what is the funniest thing that ever happened to me, I don't know. I don't know what the funniest thing that ever happened to me in a game is. There's lots of. Oh, okay. I know. The funniest thing that ever happened to me in a game was I was staked and eaten by a black spiral dancer in a LARP. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just oh wow, that is what a way to go out. What a way to go out.
Yeah.
It's an explosive way to go out. Or just absolutely visceral. Fantastic. Okay. Now, during this whole meeting that we've had, this whole interview that we've had, this conversation, I want you to think back on it. And at any point during that, if I could have been any animal during this conversation, which would make you most comfortable in the setting? I would still have my voice. I would still be wearing the clothes that I'm wearing. But if I was any animal, what would make you more comfortable?
A jaguar.
Oh, excellent choice. Excellent choice there. We have to write that down. We have to write that down and see if we can talk to people about getting, we've got people we can contact. Just see maybe we can get started on that. Excellent.
I
Derrick,
look forward to seeing the suit.
I hope it, we'll see how it turns out. Derrick, do you have any questions before we get into our rapid fire round?
Yeah. So like, you've done a lot of cool shit, right? Thinking on legacy and stuff like that. What do you want to come from your time on Earth?
I don't know. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
That's a good one. That's
Fuck
a
yeah.
good one.
That's a fantastic answer. Free Palestine. Fuck yes. Excellent. Well, Khaldoun, this has been a pleasure. It has been an absolute privilege. And before we go ahead and go ask this rapid fire question round here for you, I want you to go ahead and tell everybody here at home where they can find you, and also some things to look out for you in the future. And also, just go ahead and reiterate once again where people can go ahead and pick up the Black Hand.
Well, they can pick up the Black Hand playing the Sabbat on the Storyteller's Vault, which is part of the One Bookshelf system. I think if you just Google the Black Hand playing the Sabbat Storyteller, you'll find it. It's the hottest title on the Storyteller's Vault right now. And yeah, find it there. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Khalil, Khelil. And I'll actually be on an actual play in about an hour on the Vorpal Tales channel, playing Dungeons and Dragons. If you want to like stare at me some more, I guess. No judgment. I don't know what you're doing. And then I guess as far as what's coming out next, the Second Inquisition book, the official V5 Second Inquisition book, will be out in I think 2-3 weeks. So I wrote for that. The Vampires Player's Guide, the V5 Player's Guide, just got announced yesterday. Been kind of hush on that this whole time, so that's finally coming out. Ken Hite developed that book, and there's lots of exciting stuff in that book. And for the Black Hand playing the Sabbat, we're actually writing 3 scenarios, basically 3 adventures for Sabbat characters based on all the rules and stuff we wrote in that book. The first one hopefully will be out before the summer. That's Our Graves Are Empty.
Oh, sounds great. I have had my eyes eagerly feasted upon as soon as it becomes available. So I cannot wait for that. Well, it has been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to sit down and talk with you. And I hope, and I said we had one last question, where to find you, all this stuff like that. But we are planning our own Vampire Chronicle here on Carrying Comfort Studios. And I would be remiss not to ask you to be involved. It is called Villains. It is going to be an anthology series. It's going to be set in the desert, the California desert. And it is going to have a focus more on the characters as opposed to sex and city lines, but it's going to be effect on what being a kindred is and how they are set apart by their different clans and what brings them together as well. And I would love to have you involved in that project in any way possible.
Yeah, slide into my DMs. I want to hear all about it.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
We've got our rapid fire round here. Okay, so me and Derek have accumulated some questions here that we think is very important that we can answer you. I want you to just speak off the top of your dome what comes to your mind firstly when you hear our questions end, and we're going to go into that, and then we are going to lead into what is the end of our show. We are going to be raiding into a different channel, and I think we can say that we've learned a little bit more about you, Khaldoun, and we've learned a little bit more about what you do, and I'm so glad that we had you on here. So starting us off here on this rapid fire round, Derek, why don't you get us started?
All right, let's go. What social stigma does society need to get over?
Racism.
Perfect. Favorite dinner food?
Tacos.
What was the last photo you took?
Boy, a cat photo.
Flyer turn invisible.
Sorry?
Flyer turn invisible.
Oh, turn invisible. Come on. Anybody who says fly is lying.
What's the most expensive thing you've ever broken?
Wow. A watch.
Favorite dance move?
I don't know. Pick up a penny, show it to God. Classic goth dance move.
Amazing. And tying into that, what is your favorite music album to listen to right now? Not of all time, but right now, what's been on repeat for you?
Wow. What has been on repeat for me? The theme song to Peacemaker. That Wigwam song do you really want to smell it or something?
Amazing closing up. Okay, excellent questions, excellent answers tonight. Thank you so much, Khaldoun. We know you have a show that you have to get ready for here soon in an hour, so thank you so much. And Derek, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody at home where they can find you, and then I will go into myself, and then we'll go ahead and send over. I believe we're going to be raiding into Rolling D's 20s, who, speaking, funnily enough, they have their Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle going on right now, Philly by Night. So we can go ahead and give them some support.
Yeah, thanks so much, Derek and Wes. This was really great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course,
No
of course.
Thank you. I am the Phasing Octopus, Derek. You can find me everywhere at the Phasing Octopus, except for Twitter. It's just Phasing Octopus.
Fantastic. And my name is Wes Franks. I am the creative director and the founder here of Carrying Comfort Studios. And it was, once again, great pleasure talking to Khaldoun here. And you can catch us tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for Carrying Comfort News. It is our first episode. We are going to be talking about TTRPG news, video game news, professional wrestling news. There's big predictions for a wrestling pay-per-view that's happening tomorrow night. So go ahead and check us out 3 p.m. Eastern right at this channel. Go ahead and leave us a follow. Subscribe to us on YouTube, leave us a follow on Twitter. We would love to have you check out the rest of our programming that we have coming up. Thank you so much. Check out our sponsors, Dice MV, Callow, 1985 Games, and please go follow Khaldoun and go check out the works that he has written on, not just the Black Hand, but also check out Dune, check out the Sabbat, Second Inquisition, Camarilla supplements, and some of that older stuff too. If you're looking into digging into Cairo by Night, or any of those things, then be sure to go check those out. It's very interesting. And I guess that is it for us. So we're gonna go ahead and hit that raid, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and do not forget, comfort comes soon. Goodbye.